And so if you say, well, I'm getting older, I'm not feeling so well anymore, I think I'm going to buy some health insurance. And effectively what you're doing is gambling that you never break your leg or something, because you never know when something's going to happen, right? But you can gamble and you can win at that game. You can, wait until later and then buy health insurance. And then, after you get your health insurance and it's been in force for, really any amount of time, but let's say you buy your health insurance and this is the first time you've had health insurance your whole life, and then 2 months later, you go see a doctor. And because you just get sick, and you go see a doctor and the doctor goes, oh my gosh, you've got cancer. Well, at that point, you would be covered because you didn't know that you had cancer. It wasn't diagnosed. No doctor said you have this. It could have been anything. You could have had a stomach ache. You could have a headache if it's brain cancer or something. I just had a neck ache or whatever. I mean, you don't know what it's going to be. And see, that's the thing. When they're determining, what's a pre-existing condition, if they ask you a question like, but didn't you know that you have cancer before you signed up for the healthcare? No, you didn't. You didn't, and legally you don't. That's actually true because, until a medical professional who is qualified to make that determination says that you have something, you don't have something. You are not qualified to say, I had some symptoms before I signed up for healthcare, and I knew I had some symptoms, but I felt kind of under the weather or whatever. That doesn't count. Because you didn't know what it was. You're not a medical professional, and until you get a medical professional to say it's this, then that doesn't count. So you should get healthcare, and you should get it before you get sick. And really, I would recommend having it and just paying for it per month, playing the game the way the game is supposed to be played, and then when you get sick, then you can dip your hand into the pot. And if if you've been on their system for 3 years or whatever, and then you go, I'm sick now, nobody's really going to look at that and go, but you knew. No, I've been paying into the system for 3 years, So, but that's why pre-existing conditions are necessary, because they prevent people from abusing the system by waiting until they get sick, then getting on healthcare to get the healthcare company to pay for their healthcare, and then as soon as they get better, then they just cancel their healthcare. And then if they get sick again, then they just get back on healthcare, pull more money out of the system until they're cured, and then get right back off healthcare. That's not how the system is supposed to work. It requires all these people who are not sick paying into the pot, because if everybody did that, then the only people who would be paying into the pot would be people who are sick. And then, how is you paying $10,000-ish into a pot going to somehow magically turn into $250,000, and just the company, where's the company's money going to come from that's going to pay for this? And it doesn't work that way. So that's why I can't really see a way to not have this pre-existing conditions thing happen. You're either playing the game and paying into the pot, and then you're sharing the risk, and then when it's your turn you get to pull, or you're not. You can't come in and dip your hands into a pot just because the pot happens to be there if you're not one of the people who's been paying into it. The only people who are able to pull money out of the pot are the people who are paying into it, and have been playing the game the appropriate way. So no, and I have a pre-existing condition. I have a medical issue. We're not here to talk about me, obviously, but no, I have a medical issue, and so I have to maintain health care. And if it drops, and then I want to go sign up again. Currently, under the current system, I could sign up and they can't tell me, we're not going to cover that because whatever, because pre-existing conditions. But if they bring pre-existing conditions back and then I want to go buy health care, I want to, do that, They have rules for this, like you can switch healthcares. You're not locked into one. You can, drop one healthcare company and join another one within, I think it's 63 days, if I'm not mistaken. It might be something else, but I believe it's 63 days. But yeah, you can switch you can drop, your healthcare, and then you can go get a different healthcare company, get a new policy, whatever, and healthcare, the pre-existing conditions don't apply because you were at least part of another pot. You were paying into the system. You're not trying to abuse the system. Realistically, the pre-existing condition rules are actually fairly reasonable, in my opinion. But they do require you to, while you're healthy, you play the game, So, I just don't really see a way to not have the pre-existing conditions and have the companies still be financially capable of doing what we want them to do. And I understand that there are people like, no, I don't want to go back to pre-existing conditions. I don't want to have to, and I don't either. But the company can't exist the other way. And they're not. They're falling apart. So, I just don't see a way to not go back to the pre-existing conditions thing the way it used to be. But there was a lot of companies. What was it? I believe the companies, the way they used to do it was, okay, so you've got a pre-existing condition, fine. Well, we're not going to cover that for a year or 2 years, but then after that, then they'll cover it. I don't know if that's the same for all of them, but I seem to recall back in the day the way the system used to work was, the pre-existing condition rule only applies for a year or two, things like that. The contracts are different. Like some contracts said things like, okay, so we'll cover what's considered medical, but if you need some kind of psychological care, if you want to have something that covers psychiatric or whatever. I believe that's what it was considered. Then that's not covered for a year, but then after a year, then it does cover that, and things like that. Like I said, it's a contract. And contracts can do anything. It's an agreement on a sheet of paper. So what about repeal versus repeal and replace? At first, I was in favor of just repeal, and I'm still in favor of that, really. It's okay. We could just repeal. I'd be okay with that. We could do it in a two-part thing. We could say just repeal, and then if you've got ideas for how to make the system better afterwards, then you can come and put that in later as a secondary thing, and that's fine. So that's fine. I'm not against that at all. But I will point out that if you just repeal, it'll put us back to where we were before Obamacare, which is certainly better than where we are now, so that would definitely be an improvement, which is good. No problem with that. But I'll also point out that our healthcare system was not without problems prior to Obamacare. That's kind of why a lot of people were, they had open minds about Obamacare. So in the first place, when it was, hey, we've got a solution for how to make the healthcare system better, and everybody understood that the healthcare system was complicated back before the Affordable Care Act went through. So I think that just understand that if we just repeal, we're just going back to that. That doesn't really fix the problem. The fix made the problem worse, so we're going back to the old problem, which was not as bad as where we are now, which is certainly an improvement, but let's not pretend that's good, like it's going to solve the problem. It would just make it, I guess what you might call tolerable again. So personally, I'm willing to hear ideas on if somebody says, yes, we should repeal Obamacare, yes, we have to do this, but I think we could also throw this in, and that would be good. If somebody has ideas, then by all means. So there's my thought about what we might be able to do about healthcare. There are some other ideas that I have as well, some finer tune sort of things. Some things about how to make sure that the maximum allowable amounts that the healthcare companies offer are fair prices that are accurate, that aren't overpaying, because obviously if you have healthcare, you're going to want for the maximum allowable amount to be as low as possible so that you can afford to pay what it is that you owe. Of course, if you're a doctor, you're going to want the maximum allowable amount to be as high as possible, because then you make more money. So you have these conflicting forces there. But we're going to stop there for now. I think that just like I said, I gave you what my idea was in the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds or so. But I think so now that we understand what the problem is, why it is that things are too expensive, and like I said, there are more reasons than that. Like I said, there's an entire laundry list you could make of complaints about inefficiency here and regulations there, and I mean we could go on forever. But by instilling capitalism, I don't think it's because there's too much capitalism. There's a lot of people who say, oh, greedy, this and that and whatever. I don't think it's because there's too much capitalism involved in the system. I think it's because there's not enough capitalism involved in the system. I think it's because there's not enough competition. It's like I've explained, it kind of stifles your ability to shop around, which is the big problem. So there's my thoughts.